I moved into the apartment at the end of January. It was cheap, close to the subway, and quiet. A little too quiet, if I'm honest. The building was old but solid. Brick exterior, creaky floorboards, radiator heat that hissed all night. My unit was 4C, 4th floor, last one at the end of the hall. The only other unit on my side was 4B, the door across from mine. I never saw anyone come or go from 4B, not once. The first night I was there, I noticed a soft tapping sound coming through the wall. Nothing crazy. Just a slow tap, then silence, then again. I figured it was the plumbing, or maybe the radiator kicking in. But it happened the next night too. Same rhythm. Same wall. Sometimes I'd hear scratching, or what sounded like faint whispering. It wasn't loud. Just quiet enough to feel deliberate, like someone was standing right on the other side of the wall, listening as I fell asleep. After a week, I asked the supervisor, Manny, if someone was staying in 4B. He gave me a strange look and said no, that unit was empty. Had been for almost a year after a bad leak. Said they never got around to finishing the repairs. I didn't tell him about the sounds. Just nodded and let it go. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because if 4B was empty, then who or what was making the noise? Then it got worse. One night around 2 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of furniture being dragged across the floor next door. Long, heavy scraping, then a loud thud. I sat up, heart pounding, and stared at the wall. It went completely quiet as soon as I moved. I pressed my ear to the drywall. No footsteps, no voices. Nothing. Just silence, like whoever was on the other side knew I was listening. I started recording audio on my phone while I slept, just to prove I wasn't losing it. The next morning, I listened back. For hours there was nothing, just background hum. Then, at 3:17 a.m., a low thud. A few seconds later, the sound of whispering. I couldn't make out the words. And then came a faint click, like a door unlocking. That sound chilled me more than anything else. It didn't sound like it came from next door. It sounded like it came from inside my apartment. That day, I asked Manny if I could see the hallway security footage. He seemed hesitant, but let me take a look. Between midnight and 5 in the morning, no one entered or exited the 4th floor. No movement by my door. No one went into 4B. And yet, I kept hearing those noises. That night, I inspected my apartment. In the bathroom, behind the mirror, I noticed something off. A rectangular patch in the drywall with newer paint. I pressed on it. It popped open. Behind the panel was a crawl space. It was tight, dusty, and cold. I grabbed a flashlight and pulled myself through. It opened directly into the apartment next door, 4B. The room wasn't gutted, like Manny said. It was dark, but clearly lived in. A mattress on the floor, empty food containers, a pile of old clothes in the corner, and a table. On it were dozens of printed photos. Every single one of them was of me, eating, sleeping, brushing my teeth, taken from inside my own apartment. I called the police immediately. They searched both units and found footprints in the ceiling crawl space that ran over the entire floor. That's how they'd been getting in. They checked every vent, panel, and hallway, but they never found the person who had been living there. Not a trace. No fingerprints. Nothing. Just a single note left on the mattress. It read, "I liked the old routine better. You ruined it." When my girlfriend and I moved into the house on Wisteria Lane, everything felt like a fresh start. We were both tired of the city and wanted something slower, quieter. The neighbors were friendly, but none more than the old woman next door. Her name was Edith. She showed up on our doorstep the day we moved in, holding a tray of homemade cookies and a wide, warm smile. She told us she'd lived there for nearly 50 years, and that she was glad to finally have a nice young couple next door again. We thanked her and didn't think twice about it. A few days later, both of us came down with something. It started with headaches, then nausea. We assumed it was stress, or maybe the water in the new place. I even joked that we were just allergic to adulthood. But when it lingered past a week and started getting worse with the dizziness, stomach cramps, shortness of breath, we got worried. We went to urgent care, and the doctor said it looked like food poisoning or chemical exposure, but nothing showed up clearly in the tests. We threw out anything in our fridge that looked suspicious, cleaned everything top to bottom. We even tested the tap water just to be sure. Then one morning, I came home from a quick grocery run and saw the front door slightly open. Nothing was missing. No signs of forced entry. We thought maybe we'd left it ajar. But later, my girlfriend swore she'd locked it behind me. It happened again 2 days later, and again a week after that. So I bought a security camera. Just a simple motion-activated one we placed above the front door. For a while, nothing strange showed up. Then one night around 2 a.m., the motion alert pinged. I opened the app and watched in disbelief as Edith slowly stepped onto our porch. She unlocked the door using something on her keyring, walked inside, and didn't come back out for nearly 15 minutes. The next morning, she came over like nothing had happened and handed us a tin of lemon bars. I took the footage to the police. They said without signs of forced entry, there wasn't much they could do. Edith claimed she was just checking on us and thought she had our permission. I knew it was a lie. So I did some digging. Looked up the property history and anyone who'd lived nearby. That's when I found the articles. A couple from 3 blocks over, both poisoned. Husband died. Wife survived, but was in a coma. The prime suspect was their neighbor, a woman named Edith, who moved away shortly after the investigation stalled. It was the same Edith. Same eyes, same crooked smile. Just 30 years older. I went back through our camera footage, this time watching her movements frame by frame. She always entered our kitchen, always opened the same cabinet. When I checked it, I found a small bag hidden behind the spice rack. Inside were white powder packets labeled in faded handwriting. Dose 1, Dose 2, and Final. We left that night, didn't wait for her to come back. Cops finally got a warrant, but the house next door was empty. Edith was gone. Her place cleaned out as if she'd never lived there. No forwarding address. No trace. We still have the police report, and the powder tested positive for a dangerous pesticide that had been banned for years. I sometimes wonder if we were part of a collection, a long list of neighbors she welcomed, because the tin she gave us had our names written neatly on the bottom, along with the words, "Almost done." I moved into 112 Oakridge Lane in early spring. The house was modest but newly renovated with fresh paint, new carpet, the works. It was part of a rent-to-own deal that seemed too good to pass up. The company that handled it, Piney Valley Properties, had an office downtown and a friendly rep who walked me through everything. My closest neighbor was a guy in his late 60s named Tom. He kept to himself, mostly, but the first time we spoke, he asked a strange question. "You sure someone rented that house to you?" I laughed and told him yes, thinking maybe he was just trying to be funny. But he wasn't smiling. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing small things. A scorched smell in the living room, even when nothing had been burned. Black smudges near the light switches, like soot. I found a melted toy soldier in the backyard. Then there was the noise. Late at night, I'd hear the sound of a door closing. Always the same soft thump, like someone was walking through the hallway. But I lived alone. I checked every room more than once. Nothing was out of place. No one was there. One night I found a charred photo frame on the porch. It wasn't mine. The glass was cracked, and the picture inside was half burned, but I could still make out a little girl standing in what looked like my kitchen. I showed it to Tom the next day, and he just stared at it. Then he said, "That house burned down in 2009. A little girl and her mother died in there." I told him that couldn't be right. I was living there. I had a lease, paperwork, and keys. The house was clearly real. He shook his head and walked away. I drove to the county office that afternoon and asked to see the property records for 112 Oak Ridge. The clerk searched the database for a few minutes, then frowned. She said the house didn't exist. Not anymore. She turned her monitor toward me. The property had been listed as demolished. The last record was dated July 3rd, 2009. Cause: total fire loss. I told her that was impossible. I was living there. She looked confused, then asked if I had anything proving ownership. I showed her the lease. She studied it closely. Then she asked who Piney Valley Properties was. I told her. She typed it in. Nothing came up. I drove straight to the Penny Valley office. The building was there, same as before, but the suite was empty. The glass door had peeling paint, and inside was just a dusty desk and a broken chair. No one had been there in years. The directory downstairs didn't even list their name. I went home that night, locked every door and window, and stayed awake until sunrise. Around 3 a.m., I heard the door open again. This time, I had a camera set up in the hallway. I watched the footage the next morning. The front door opened by itself. No one entered, but in the frame, the hallway light flickered. Then, just for a moment, a shape passed in front of the camera. A silhouette, small, child-sized. I called a friend who worked in real estate law. He looked over my lease and told me it was a fake. The signatures didn't match any registered agents. The address for Piney Valley's business license didn't exist. Everything I had, the documents, the keys, the contact numbers, none of it was real. He asked me if I was absolutely certain I had been living there. Of course I was. I was standing in the house as we spoke. But when I looked outside, things were different. No cars. No neighbors. Just rows of trees where houses had been. I opened the front door and stepped out. The porch creaked under my feet, and the air smelled like smoke. But not fresh smoke. Old, burned in. I turned around, and where the house had been was nothing but blackened foundation. Charred beams. The remnants of a fire that had happened years ago. The house I thought I had been living in wasn't there. And I never found out who or what let me in.